The story of Kreta Ayer goes back to the year 1822 when Chinatown was established. During that time, the Chinese community in Singapore formed enclaves based on their dialect groups. Kreta Ayer was mainly home to the Cantonese community who brought with them cultural traditions from their hometowns in China. Kreta Ayer soon became a cultural heartland where the traditional arts flourished, and many of these art forms are still practiced there today. A handful of cultural art forms in Kreta Ayer were part of Chinese Cantonese culture, the most prominent of which was Chinese opera. In the 19th century, Chinese opera was the most popular form of entertainment in Singapore and was often performed at Buddhist Taoist festivals. Performances were initially held on makeshift stages, but as audience numbers increased, opera houses with large seating capacities were built to house the shows. The opera costumes spin a story of their own. In general, Chinese opera costumes can be divided into 5 categories that are distinguished by unique designs and motifs. An actor playing the role of a general would don an armor costume, known as Kao, the most elaborate costume amongst all roles. The 4 flags at the back symbolize the general's readiness for war and are removed after the battle scene is completed. From the 1970s, the rise of mass media meant that Chinese opera took to the small screen and radio. Audiences could then enjoy the shows from the comfort of their own homes, and fans could even own a copy of their favorite performances. These old vinyl records are now vintage collectibles for opera enthusiasts. Another form of popular entertainment was Chinese puppet theater. Like Chinese opera, Chinese puppetry is associated with the Buddhist Taoist religion and is usually performed on makeshift stages. These small stages are often very popular among younger children. Some retired practitioners of Chinese opera eventually become Chinese puppeteers, putting their singing skills to good use. There were 4 common puppet genres in Singapore. Each genre's puppets are maneuvered using different methods, and the puppets also come in varying sizes. Fascinating, aren't they? Listen. Early Chinese immigrants to Singapore brought with them Nanyin, a musical tradition that originated from Fujian, China. The familiar strains of Nanyin provided a sense of comfort for these early settlers who labored far from their homeland. In a Nanyin musical set, the pipa serves as the leading instrument and is used to provide the main melody. The scorebook uses the Chinese traditional notation method called Gong Chi Pu. The larger Chinese characters are the lyrics, whereas the smaller characters are the musical notes. This notation method is still used by contemporary Nanyin musicians today, carrying on the traditions of the early Chinese community. The rich cultural heritage of Kreta Ayer can also be found on the walls of buildings and shophouses. Before literacy became widespread, the Chinese community depended on calligraphers for correspondence back home. But calligraphy is also a means of expression employed by poets, artists, and intellectuals. You can often see such work on the signboards and facades of buildings such as the Majestic Theatre. The 5 Chinese characters on the front of the building was written by Tan Heng Fu, one of the well-known first-generation Chinese calligraphers in Singapore. Time for a cup of tea. Chinese tea dates back to more than 3,000 years ago when the plant was used as medicine in China. Today, tea is an integral part of Chinese culture, playing important roles in religious rituals, social customs, and food heritage. Tea brewers will match the selected tea with the right tea wares, infuse tea leaves in freshly boiled water, and pour tea into individual serving cups. In Chinatown, tea houses were the gathering places of the Chinese community, and there were also merchants involved in the tea trade who set up business here. Some of these tea shops still operate in Kreta Ayer today. Got your fill of culture? These art forms are examples of Singapore's intangible cultural heritage, which refer to the cultural practices and living traditions that continue to evolve with time. Kreta Ayer is one such jewel box of cultural heritage, with many more traditions and practices just waiting to be uncovered.